Moore's Law is the theory that every action you take will produce results that are the opposite of what was to be expected. And you're going to see Moore's Law come to life on this episode of Josh's Car Corner. So this episode is going to be all about making preparations to get the car ready to make a return to NoFlyZone here in Arizona coming up in mid-December. Now I learned a lot in the last 2 no-fly zones that I did. The first one, I got so close to 150 miles an hour and a half mile, I had to go back and try it again. But then unfortunately, when we did no-fly zone Midwest, back in May, we had that 20 mile an hour headwind we were driving into, and I couldn't make any speed at all. And the best I think I did that day was I think I touched 142 one time. So that shouldn't be a problem here in Arizona. Wind traditionally does not happen, especially in December. And if anything, we'll get a little bit of a slight tailwind. And the air will be a lot cooler, and it's a fantastic runway. It's a much better facility than up in No-Fly Zone Midwest, so it should be a good time. I know there are things that I can do to improve the performance of the car over what I had last year. One thing that has been restricting me, and I realized this after going to No-Fly Zone the first time, is this intake, this Veraram air intake. It's a great setup for the street, and at street speeds it's fantastic because you can open up the scoops here on the hood and it can actually force feed the intake, get you a little bit extra air. However, once you're going those half-mile speeds over 120 miles an hour, what's happening is there's a high pressure zone being created in front of the car. And the high pressure zone is carrying over the hood, and it's creating a low pressure zone above the scoops. So once you get going really fast with this intake, you have a low pressure zone here, and because the scoops are open, you actually end up sucking air out of this intake box, which actually robs you of a little bit of horsepower. The other problem with this Veraram intake setup is that it's so stubby and short and close to the throttle body. I've never been able to get my LS3 MAF in there. I might have mentioned a couple of years ago that I wanted to put an LS3 MAF in this thing. The reason I've never been able to do it is because I just don't have the clearance. This should fix that. You saw this on Instagram? This is a DuSpeed intake that I just received from Australia. This came from a guy, he lives in Sydney, he makes these custom for your application. So what I had him do is make me one that will fit the 0506 GTO layout instead of using the factory LS2 MAF, which is a big plastic body that's about this thick, which you'll see later. It's just got an outlet in it for the LS3 card style MAF. And he has such great attention to detail, he actually goes to the trouble of painting these things to match the color of your car. So this thing is painted Quicksilver Metallic. And he also included for me this harness. This is an IAT breakout. What else he does with the air intake setup is he relocates another intake air temp sensor, gets it out of the MAF housing. One of the huge problems with any GMLS application is the way GM decided to do air temp measurement is to put the air temp sensor in the MAF body. And when the MAF is so close to the engine, it gets ambient heat off the engine. It heats up the body, which in turn heats up the sensor. The sensor thinks the incoming air is a lot hotter than it's supposed to be. It pulls back a ton of timing. You lose a ton of horsepower. I used to notice that when I first got this car back in 2011, I would go to the track, and between hot lap runs, I could lose a half second between passes, because once this temp sensor gets heat soaked, it can pull 7-8 degrees of timing. That's almost 50 horsepower in some cases, depending on your build. So that's a noticeable decrease in performance. And it's nothing but false information being gotten from an overheated sensor. So putting the intake air temp sensor in the air box means you're always going to be measuring ambient air temp, getting a correct reading, getting the correct amount of ignition timing, getting the correct amount of power. Now, hand on heart, I have not opened this box up yet. I have no idea what's inside here. So why don't I get on a knife and we'll open this thing up and see what's inside this box together. Okay, I say knife, but what I actually mean is razor blade. So let's get inside this box here. I'm excited about this. We chatted back and forth a couple times, Deuce and me, about this and what exactly I wanted. And And he didn't actually want the paint name, he actually wanted the paint code that comes on that tin plaque that's under the hood, the 470G for me. Oh, wow. Okay. This is amazing. Let me just get this out here. That is it. Oh man, it's all wrapped up still. More digging needs to be done. But I can tell already this thing is absolutely amazing. I'm going to be very careful here because it is a painted piece, so I don't want to scratch the paint. There it is. Wow. That's really cool. Painted Quicksilver Metallic, and the filter is a lot smaller than I expected it to be, but it's really wide, so you'll actually catch a lot of air. And this looks like it's going to go beneath the radiator a bit and actually catch a lot more air coming off the radiator. There's the intake air temp sensor that he added in, and there is the boss he put in it for the MAF card. So this is exactly what I need to be able to start using the LS3 MAF. So I'm going to test fit this thing and see how this looks under the hood. Okay, I've had this thing on and off so many times, this is going to be easy. Take the filter off. This is a mechanism I had to create to make the old MAF sensor, or relocate the wiring, because originally the MAF sensor is placed down here in the intake tract, so I had to make this wiring loom back when I first put this in to get the wiring back up here. See, and this is the other problem with the Veram intake. This kind of just sits on top of the radiator and just floats. Nothing holds it in place. So I can rattle around, and it can't really shift too much because it's kind of embossed with the radiator and it can't really move too much. But it's not the best setup. So now, let's see how this guy fits. And I just noticed too, he included a bunch of brand new plastic push pins too to seat this thing in the factory mounting holes. That's really cool. So it's going to go like that. And then, oh, I see, this is rolled up. So I just got to roll this back. Oh, sure enough, and it's got a flex bit in it so I can get it the diameter that I need. Well, that's just rough for now, but okay, let's see. So once this thing's fully seated, there's a pinhole there. There's a pinhole there. It needs to go a little farther back on the bottom, it looks like. Okay, and there's a breather hose if you want to use it, but you don't have to use it. In fact, I don't use one anymore, so I won't be hooking that up, but that looks trick. So it's partially over the radiator, but it's also still getting air in from under the hood. So it's getting it from two places. That's kind of neat. And as far as going down and blocking the radiator, I'm just looking through here. It is blocking it a little bit, but not much. And honestly, I'm definitely going to get the SAP grills now, just because being more recessed, remember what I was talking about before with airflow and everything? If these holes in the front of the car are more recessed, more air will get shoved into them before the high pressure pushes it all over the car. That's exactly what I need now, because now suddenly the kidney grills will feed the air intake along with under the hood. So that's really cool. It is a really clean piece. It looks great. This one hole right here doesn't want to line up. That is pretty much lines up, but that one is a little bit off. That one's close. I'm sure it's fitment issues on my part. I'm sure I just got to play with it a little bit to get it seated in here, but I mean, it does look great. I mean, it looks like it was meant to be on the car. And I love this nice long section here to straighten out the air and get the velocity going. It's so much better than this setup. See, look at the flaws in this setup. So you got the factory MAF body here, and this is what's wrong with it. And look at the restriction that's in it too. You see this? This is a divider wedge to kind of even out the airflow again. And then the MAF sensor element is in here too, along with the air temp sensor. And then they put a honeycomb in front of it too to again smooth the airflow out. But it's such a huge restriction and a bottleneck. This is just a big 4-inch pipe that's wide open and is going to allow the maximum amount of air into the engine. Okay, I've been playing around with this thing for about 25 minutes here, and I want to give some first impressions on it, and I want to be as honest as I can be about it. So this is the breakout cable. So this is going to the MAF sensor, and then it goes to the intake temp sensor, and then this is what plugs into your factory connector. The connection for the MAF card to this assembly, the way the MAF card mounts in here, because this tube is round and the MAF card is designed to be mounted to a flat surface, these screws are now pulling on these ears of the tab, and they're metal, so they shouldn't break, but I am a little concerned about the stress there. The MAF card does come with a rubber seal, so that should be sealing it. It is just a little questionable. I would have preferred that it was either mounted flat or that these screws didn't have this gap here, but it does seem to work. The other thing, I wanted to see how difficult it would be to get the air filter out, and you can get it out. It's in there tight, which is good. You want a seal. However, to put it in there, it looks like multi-purpose grease was just spread all over the place to try to wedge this thing in here, and that's not a big deal. Grease isn't going to hurt anything if it's not getting on the filter material, but anytime you take the filter out and get it back in, the grease just gets all over the place on the brand new, beautifully painted intake. I've had to wipe it off a couple of different times with paper towels just to clean it up. So that's okay. I was hoping there'd be a plug for this, but there wasn't one, so I'll just have to go to the hardware store and get a plug and cap that off. All in all though, I still think it's a really nice piece, and it's going to look a lot nicer under the car than that Veraram intake, which was getting faded and never really sat right, and I had covered it with stickers just to try to distract from that, but I won't be doing that with this. This is going to stay just the way it is because I really like the look of it. So if you want to get one of these intakes for yourself, all you have to do is go to DuSpeed.com.au, and by the way, right now the current exchange rate, last time I checked, is 75 cents to the Australian dollar. So if you want to get one of these in the States, you can get a really good deal right now because the exchange rate is so low. Putting this on the car is the easy part. The hard part is what I have to do afterward. Because I'm changing the MAF sensor, the calibration is going to be completely out of whack. So what I have to do now is retune the computer for the new MAF sensor. And since some of you have asked me to do a video on tuning, I'm going to do one. Full disclosure, I am not a professional tuner. I've tuned my car, I've tuned some friends' cars, but I don't know every little trick there is to making these things run. I just know how to make my car run really well. But I am going to show you via HP Tuners some of the basics to tuning, and if you ever want to tune your own car someday, hopefully you'll have a little bit of a head start going into it so you know what to look for. Okay, it's a few days later and I've been working on the air intake, and I finally figured out what was going on, why I couldn't make it fit. And it was really because of what I've already done to the car. It's because right here of the Veraram power wedge that's behind the throttle body. So that is moving the throttle body forward, so this pipe part of the intake was running into it, and that's why it wouldn't set all the way back. So I shaved about 1/4 of an inch off of it, and now I have clearance. So now these bolt holes, or these holes in the body anyway, for the most part line up. This one's a little goofy. I might have to open it up and move it back a little bit, but for the most part it's good. Now, one other thing under here you need to see. The instructions say that what you need to do is take this bracket off that holds the AC condenser in place right here. You can keep that one on this side, and then you've still got the two down here on the bottom. So the reason you need to do that is because of the design of the intake. The condenser needs to move back a little bit. So this thing right here comes with a kit, and there were no specific instructions as to what it does, but what I've decided it's for is to be a spacer between the condenser and the radiator. So all I did is, you could just throw it in there, but I took some soft side of Velcro and just put it on there so I don't have metal on metal in there, and I'm just going to have that in there to allow a gap so it can't ever move back too far. One other thing I want to point out is I did make one additional modification to this intake, as you'll see right here. I covered the bottom of it with reflective gold tape. Now this is something that you might only see on hypercars and supercars or race cars to reflect heat. But I figure this thing is sitting right next to a radiator. I'm trying to get the coldest air into the engine possible, so why not do what I can. This roll of tape only cost me 13 bucks, and it took me about a half hour to do this. So, and this little section right here is for the temp sensor. That's why that's not covered. But I figure any little bit helps, and hopefully that will keep my air intake air temperatures a couple of degrees cooler than they would otherwise be. Another thing I need to mention about this is I had to also plug this hole. From the initial design, there's a vacuum hose that's in here he gives you to hook up to the normal factory vacuum system that comes off the valve cover. But I've got the oil catch can, so I don't need this, so I just went to the hardware store and got a rubber plug. Cut it to fit so it's not sticking way in there, and just put that in to seal it up. So I'm going to finalize this installation, get it in here, hook the MAF sensor back up, and then I will get into showing you how you actually tune with HP tuners on one of these computers for the GTO. So I'm sure at this point you are expecting to see me showing you how to tune with HP tuners, but there's two things I need to bring up. One, I have a new part on the GTO that I neglected to mention when I was shooting the original footage, and I want to show that to you right now. This is a new lower grill insert that I got from a company called Bad Haas Productions that I found on Facebook. It's supposed to kind of mimic the VF Commodore grills, except you can get them in your factory GTO front bumper. Now, I got the lower one for now because I really hated the factory one with that cheap black plastic and the stupid horizontal lines. And he also makes them for the kidney grills too. However, you've got to either have some original factory SAP shells, or you have to get the SAP shells from Mavman, because you need the type that use the locking clips instead of the screw type like all the other aftermarket ones are. But I'm eventually going to get that because I kind of want to have the VF Commodore look on the front of this car without having to go ahead and get the whole Holden Monaro bumper. While I was editing everything together, I realized that there's so much information I wanted to cover with HP tuners that would make a ridiculously long episode. So what I've decided to do instead is put that HP tuner footage in a completely separate episode, and I'm going to put a link to that in one of those little card things right up at the top, right in that corner. So if you want to go straight to the HP tuners information, follow that link. Otherwise, it will be a new episode that you'll find immediately after this one. So now that I've got that covered, let's get back to the footage of NoFlyZone. Well, it's Sunday. I'm here in Gila Bend at the airport for NoFlyZone, and I'm standing next to this Lamborghini, not because I'm particularly interested in it, but I do love a good Lamborghini. It's because it's raining. It rained the whole way here this morning. And what I found out about the new DuSpeed intake is he cuts a slit in it, so part of the air filter is above the radiator shroud and the front of the cradle cowl, and all the water that came between the gap between the hood and the front bumper went into the filter, and the filter's soaking wet. So I got to say that's not a very good design, because now I've got a wet filter, and hopefully that's not going to affect the motor in any way. Hopefully it's got enough time to dry off before we get running. But we're all parked over here under the canopy. Me and Steve Perez and Dan, who was with me at NoFlyZone in May, we're all here going to be running today. I see a lot of Corvettes. I see a lot of Mopar stuff. Going to be a lot of American muscle today, a couple of Vipers. So that's good. Looks like there'll be some good competition to run. This rain's got to stop first, and it's still raining. It might be raining until about 10 o'clock. They actually pushed the driver's meeting back to 10 o'clock. And what sucks even worse is they have a windsock I can see out there right now, and it's showing that we have a slight headwind. With the weather and the wet, possibly tarmac, and the headwind, I don't know if I'm going to be able to break 150 miles an hour. That's going to be working against me, but I'm definitely going to try. I'll make a ton of passes and do my best, but we'll see what happens. Should be an exciting day. Should be a lot of fun to race with a couple of the other GTOs. So that in itself will make it fun, but we'll see what happens today. Okay, well, I'm in the lanes for the first time here. I'm trying to gauge, based on watching everybody go here, whether the runway is still slick or not. Things have dried off for the most part. We got a breeze here. We got a slight headwind, and it's been cloudy, which is not helping the drying, but I don't know. It seems like the track's okay. I'm going to go with traction control off, and I am going to do my first run with a roll from 30 miles an hour up to the cones. What I found out, and this is kind of another thing that tells me I'm probably not going to hit 150 today, is that they set up cones, and that's where you're supposed to start, and people tend to roll up to them and then go, but that's the start of the standing half mile. So if you want to do an official standing half mile, you have to start from a dead stop there. I never did that at NoFlyZone. I always ran up to them either with a rolling start or just wide open throttle. So I actually haven't done a standing half mile. So I'm gonna do it today, but I'm just gonna do this first one as a rolling start to get a baseline, kind of gauge where I'm at and see if it's even possible. But I was catching the Mustang on the back end there, so I'm not sure if he slowed up or what. I had full grip, I had total grip, so traction's not a problem. I have no idea what that was. That seemed to come up a lot faster than it did in the old days. Huh. Well, we'll see what the results are. Left lane.
Left lane.
Thank you. Okay. 138.888. Well, that's kind of what I thought based on what I saw on the screen. That really sucks. That's slower than I went the whole time when I was here last time. I don't even know where to begin with that. What could be wrong? I gotta go look at the data log. Okay, run number 2. First run was not very successful at 138.8. I looked at the scan. It was still a little fat at wide open throttle on the MAF reading, so I thinned it out, and hopefully I'll get it to the point where at least the air-fuel ratios are right, and then, I don't know, maybe I'll just have to burn the gas off from there on and see what I can do. We shall see. This is a Z06 from Cord, so it's probably got at least 550 horsepower, so he ought to kick my ass. I know I'm not going to break 150, so I don't even care about starting at the half mile anymore. I just care about having the max distance. Here we go. That Corvette though, you didn't catch me until about halfway. That was kind of fun.
Okay, yeah, that's
all right. Thanks. Okay, a little confusion there, but 146.25, so it was faster. But again, that was not doing the roll, so it should have been faster. Well, this is like Rantoul all over again. I'm going to be happy to break 142. I don't know what it is, if it's the weather, and it's not just me. Steve is a lot slower, Dan's a lot slower, so it's not just me, it's something about the weather today, or the atmosphere, or the track, or something. We're all slower than we were the last time we did it here. And the last time that Dan and I did it in Rantoul were slower, so I don't know what's going on. I guess I'll just keep monkeying with it and see what I can get out of it today. Okay, run number 3. Air fuels are still a little bit fat on the top. I leaned it out again. It should be pretty close now. I'm running an RT Challenger this time, so this shouldn't even be a race. I mean, I should beat him pretty handily, unless he's done some crazy mods. So I'm going to run him flat out. We'll see what happens. 139.4. I went slower. Well, I don't know. I don't know. I don't understand how this could be again. That this is all I got. I had so much more a year and a half ago with less traction. Oh, I know what one difference was last time. I don't know how much of a difference this would make. I still had some of that 100 octane unleaded race gas in this thing from when I did Hot Rod Drag Week. So maybe that's got something to do with it. Okay, for this one, I'm not taking a scan, and I'm also up against a C7 Stingray, and I think he's got a passenger. So this will be another really good test of where this thing's at versus modern horsepower, because those are 460 stock, but if he's got the 8-speed, he can definitely get through the gears better. So that's why I put it on dual camera mode. This will be a good test of how 10-year-old 500 horsepower does against today's 500 horsepower. He wants to start at the back of the runway. I'm only too happy to oblige him. Because if I beat him, it only further enhances the victory. Because he'll have more runway, better aero, better gearing. This is exciting. I'm curious about this one. And they're off. Here we go. Awesome. So in that particular case, 10-year-old 500 horsepower was better than today's 500 horsepower. That was cool. I like that. I only saw 137 on the gauge though because I stayed in fourth. Now I know staying in fourth is no good. I have to go to fifth to get more top end speed. So if I'd have gone to fifth there, I should have beat him by even more. He got out ahead too. He nosed me just a bit and I clawed him back in. That's cool. That's cool. That says this thing doesn't have that bad an aero as I thought. Left lane.
Left lane. There you go.
Thank you. Oh, wait a second. I did go faster. 142. 142.225. Well, I broke 142. It's better than I did at Rantoul. Awesome. Now it's time to go into the pits though. Do a little more data logging, maybe add some timing. It's gonna be time for another run here. So I pumped the rear tires up to 40 and I added 1 degree of timing in the whole wide open area. And I'm done messing with the math table. So from here on out, whatever it does, it does. I'm just gonna do one more scan to make sure I don't get any knock retard by adding that 1 degree. And after that, I'm just gonna hot lap, burn through as much fuel as I can, switch to E85. This time I'm going up against a ZL1. He ought to kick my ass. They've been running high 140s today, and I'm only doing 142, so he ought to beat me. Not by much, hopefully only by a few cars, but something there. Oh, brake. Thank you. 144.04. All right. That was an improvement. Nice. 145 could be within my reach. So it's not the goal I started the day with, but it might be attainable. Okay. We're going to have an interesting race here. Dan's next to me. Now, if you remember when we did it in Illinois, I gave him 5 links, and that wasn't nearly enough, so I just gave him something new. He's gonna go all the way to the back line. I'm gonna stay kind of, I'm not gonna go to the cone, but I'm gonna stay kind of where everyone else kind of drives up and stops. So he's gonna close me, and then when he gets to me, I'll take off. And then I'll see if I can catch him on the far end. So this should be fun. All right, here we go. This is gonna be interesting. I don't know if I'm giving him too much of a cushion or not. I'm all packed up here and I'm going to be getting ready to leave. I put all the E85 in the car and I was sitting here letting it idle trying to get the alcohol content to come up to see how high it would get, and it wasn't coming up because it's a returnless system, so all the fuel that was in the fuel line wasn't getting burned off. So I went out there and made a run, went 142.7 again, and when I came back it was finally in the system and I had 38% alcohol content. And the computer was commanding 12.5 to 1 air-fuel ratio, which is about right for 38%, but it was still getting about 14s in reality. So now it's running super lean, and it might just be doing that around driving mode, and it might not be doing it at wide open throttle, but the battery on my laptop is now dead, so I can't afford to take the chance that it's wrong wide open throttle too and hurt the motor. So I just got a baby at home now, plug my laptop in, figure out what's going on with the tune, figure out why it's not giving me the air-fuel ratio it's commanding. So I guess all in all, this day has been a slight disappointment. The weather didn't help. I attribute everyone going slower to the humidity in the air. It's probably bumped the density altitude up pretty high, and that's why we're all going slower than we're anticipating we should be going. I set myself a goal of 150, that was never going to happen, and then I set myself a goal of 145, didn't get that either. So I'll be limping it home and figure out what's going on with the tune and hopefully get it resolved. So that's going to wrap this episode up. Once again, thanks for watching Josh's Car Corner. Say goodbye to the twins because you probably aren't going to see them like this again for a while. But see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching the show. If you like the show, let me know by clicking that subscribe button. And you can always follow what's going on with the show on Instagram at Josh's Car Corner.